2022 speaker series focuses on overall health, mental and physical. In addition to our speakers, during each session, the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center will offer a mindfulness exercise. I'm now pleased to introduce Dr. Marvin Bowser. Dr. Bowser, PhD, has taught mindfulness meditation for 20 years. He's an adjunct associate professor in the UCLA Department of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences. He teaches an undergraduate course at UCLA and mindfulness in many different venues.
Hi, everyone. I am truly honored to be part of these programs this spring. And I have 10 minutes to teach you everything I know. And that's partly a joke that I shouldn't make, but there is some truth to it insofar as the basics of mindfulness are very simple. So I do have 10 minutes. I will talk briefly about what mindfulness is and how we practice it in a meditation. And then we'll do a brief meditation together. And then I'll talk briefly about how we use mindfulness to work with difficult emotions. So mindfulness is a capacity that we all have. We don't have to get tense or complicated about creating it. It's the ability to be aware of what's happening in our experience. And it turns out that this capacity can also be refined and developed. So even though we don't have to struggle to create it, there are things we can do to develop it. And this is where the emerging science comes in. And typically what would happen is some sort of measures a 6-week or 8-week course where people learn the basics of meditation and bringing more awareness into daily life and loving kindness meditation and so forth. What we do in the meditation, I like to break into a couple of parts, just one model for thinking about it. But the idea, the first part is we use our ability to direct our attention, and we do it in a surprising way, because we ask ourselves to focus on something happening in our experience that isn't very exciting, right? That's boring, right? That doesn't need to be paid attention to, but is real. And so the sounds you can hear, unless there's a jackhammer outside or something bothering you, you probably aren't that aware of all the, there's no reason to when you're. Likewise, sensations in our bodies. There are sensations in our hands, our feet, our back, the sensations connected with the breath. These are happening, but they don't need to be paid attention to given everything else we have to do, right? So what we do in meditation is focus our attention on some of these sensations, like the sensations connected with the normal breath. The reason we begin this way is there's something about this mental activity of focusing attention on something relatively simple and doing it for a while that actually has remarkably good effects for us as humans. More calmness, clarity, stability, and so forth. And this is doable. Very often these days, mindfulness has become popular. Very often people come to my classes, undergraduates come even with some experience, thinking that they're supposed to be able to clear their minds if only they write. No, that's a misconception. We do not have to try to clear our minds. That's kind of impossible just by deciding to. But what we can do is direct our attention, and I'll guide you in this when we do a few minutes of meditation. We'll use ambient sounds, sensations in our bodies, the sensations connected with the breath. And it is manageable. You may not want to do it, and I respect that, but insofar as you want to try, you can do it. You can do it to some extent. The second part of mindfulness practice is no matter how hard we try to keep our attention focused on the breath, quite naturally, our intelligence kicks in, right? And something will draw our attention away. Just the things that we have to do today, something we're worried about, a random memory pops to mind, one thought leads. So this is our mind. We're not trying to control this. When we realize the attention has drifted, we include whatever's happening, just that recognition, thinking, planning, whatever, often emotions, we feel those emotions in our bodies. We can do this, we can get used to it, and then we gently come back to that home base of the breath. So let's take 3 minutes. How about 3 minutes? I sort of joked, but I do recognize that some of you may not be interested in meditation. You may not want to do it. Don't. It's a very personal activity. I can't say that without joking again, but I really mean it. It's like, it's a personal activity and you may have reasons you don't want to, but on the other hand, it is becoming mainstream actually fairly quickly. And I find that a lot of people are happy to have even a brief introduction. So eyes can be open or closed. You might take a few deeper breaths just as we begin, slightly deeper in breath and out breath. Just one way to begin, almost like a sigh with that out breath. And letting your breath be normal. We'll come back to the normal breath in a few seconds, but for now, just notice the sounds you can hear. So in the midst of everything else that's happening for you, just notice that you can direct your attention to what you can hear. And it's actually sort of easy. The sounds come to us. We don't have to censor any sounds. We don't have to try to hear everything. It's just this mental activity of focusing attention on this part of our experience and noticing the changing sounds. If this seems too easy, if it seems meditation should be harder, actually, no, this is it. It's like taking the time. It takes patience mostly, right? That's the effort. So we can come back to sounds anytime you wish if you meditate. It's also good to practice with our bodies. So when you wish, let your attention settle into your body. Just notice the sensations you can feel. Head, shoulders, arms, hands, torso, legs, feet. Vibration, pressure, softness, so forth. As we tune into our bodies, it can be natural to notice sensations connected with the normal breath, not breathing deeply or anything, just letting it happen. There are sensations, abdomen, slight rising, tensing with the in-breath, slight movement, softening with the out-breath, flow of fine sensations at the nose, air coming in, air leaving. So for the next minute or so, just see if you can keep your attention fairly well, knowing when the in-breath begins, when the out-breath begins. And even in this short period of time, there probably will be those moments when you realize the attention's been pulled away and you remember, oh, right, did I park? Oh, wait, are we driving? Whatever, I make bad jokes and that distracts you. It's okay. Staying with the breath. And then there's a lot of permission just to notice what's happening, what's really happening in your life, even during this minute. So just a few more seconds. Even noticing one breath is not a small thing. The feel of it in the abdomen, chest, or nose. Feel of the out breath. It's available to us. So I'll ring a bell simply to end the meditation part. So thank you. Just a couple minutes overview. It really is that simple. There are many forms of meditation. Most of them begin focusing attention on something relatively simple, like the feel of the breath. If the breath feels complicated or too tight, you can shift to your hands or your feet. That's fine, or sounds. And then this idea of having permission just to feel what's real, right? Just to notice, I'm worried. What does that feel like? Right? I'm anxious. And so this is mindfulness. We include this also. So it's that balance of focusing and then being real and giving ourselves that permission to be real. And then there are other types of practices like kindness meditation, which also go together really well. So we do have a free app I have to promote. We have a free app called UCLA Mindful. Let me put that in the chat here. We also do free drop-in meditations on Monday and Thursday Pacific time at 12:30 for a half hour. I usually do Monday. Dinah Winston normally does Thursday, and we have a lot going on. And thank you for your attention. It's a pleasure to share with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Belzer. That was amazing. And I'm now pleased to introduce our speaker, Dr. Daisy Gomez. Dr. Gomez specializes in restorative practices, working with high-risk populations and adults and families affected by trauma, gang involvement, the criminal justice system, the foster care system, substance abuse, racial injustice, and those affected by incarceration. She's collaborated with community-based organizations, national organizations, and law enforcement agencies in creating and implementing reformative initiatives to increase education and access to mental health within underserved populations. Dr. Daisy Gomez is the lead trainer for the UCLA Prevention Center of Excellence.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be in this space with all of you. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Dr. Belzer, for that amazing, just brief walkthrough into being here, fully here, and being mindful that we're here. I think, a lot of individuals, especially with lots of stress and lots of ongoing challenges, can benefit from just a moment of breathing and relaxation. So thank you for walking us through that this afternoon. So we're going to jump right in. Our time together usually flies for me. So I am just going to get started. And today we're going to be talking about transforming trauma. I know in past series we've talked about, if you're joining us from other series in which I've been, had the honor to speak. We've talked about trauma. We've talked about the impact of trauma. And today we really want to bring the focus to the positive. And that's, trauma is going to happen. We have no control over it, but what can we do with it? How can we be agents of change in the lives of those that we encounter through our journey? So as you all know, my name is Daisy Gomez. I am first generation American. I like to share a little bit of where I'm from and how I got here, just to give you a little, view into my positionality and the views and the experiences that inform my perspective and the way in which I communicate the knowledge and the lived experience with all of you. I'm born here in South LA, from parents coming from Mexico. And South LA, if you know anything about it, it's a tough neighborhood. And we see a lot of the types of, challenges that are the reasons why I work in the areas with the populations that I do, because I've seen firsthand just the need of love and compassion and understanding, especially in our underserved populations. So before we begin, I do want to just invite you all to get comfortable, find a place where, you can truly be here, with us, a place in a in a space where you can focus on what we're going to be talking about. Make sure you nourish. One of the things I am a strong believer of is that if all your needs, immediate needs, are met, we have a higher capacity to retain information. So if you have your water, your snacks, and then you're comfy, the learning maximizes. So just a little food for thought there. And some of the learning objectives for today is we're going to briefly review the significance of trauma and resilience-informed care in the foster system. We're going to define practices that positively impact youth in the foster care system, and we're going to practice some of the strategies that enhances safety, inspiration, and overall change in trajectory. Now, I know many of you have already shared who you are, and I would like to invite you all, or those that feel comfortable, to, in the chat, just share one or two things that you hope to get from today's training, since many of you already introduced yourself. One or two things that you hope to take away from our time together today. Thank you, Kaylee. Ways to better process trauma. Ways to guide and help a child going through a really challenging time. Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, learning better ways to talk about trauma, which are some of the most difficult moments in our lives that, really impact our lives. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ashley. Learn about how trauma impacts youth and help them navigate. Recognize and assist trauma. Tools. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. And please continue to put some of your, some of the goals that you hope to gain from today. And I am going to get started in hopes that I meet your expectations. So to quickly review some of the trauma and resilience informed care and the foundations of this idea, we have to put it in the most simplest of terms that we can before adding to our understanding. So if you've heard or are familiar with trauma and resilience informed care, then you probably have heard the importance of making the shift from our automatic thought, that is, what is wrong with this person? Or, talking about self, what's wrong with me? To really shifting that lens and putting a lens of compassion and answering and asking yourself, what could have happened to this person, or what is happening under the surface for me or for this individual? And to go a step further, which is a resilience informed part of this, and to ask, what are the strengths that are there? What is something I can build on? What is strong in you? What is strong in me? One of the key factors of being trauma and resilience informed is that whatever lens of compassion and lens of understanding we put on to look at other people, we first and most importantly have to put it on ourselves. Because one of the things that I cannot say enough is that we can't give what we don't have. So if we don't have any self-compassion, if we don't have self-love, it's really hard to then show people or tell people how to access it or how to use it or how it's important and can benefit them if we ourselves are lacking in those areas. So now that we understand the basic foundation of the, the quick shift that we can make when we see our automatic thoughts that are problem-based, we then revert or redirect our thoughts to be more compassionate and thinking, what has this person been through? But we also want to add layers to that. We really want to add meat to the bones of what trauma and resilience informed care looks like. So we really are talking about a whole rounded approach where we're not just being compassionate about lived experiences or the challenges people face, but we also want to acknowledge that there is no one size fits all. There is no individual that is, just the same as someone else. Everyone has a uniqueness about who they are, where they come from, where they've been. So we really want to incorporate all the other unique components of the individuals that we work with, including being culturally responsive, really trying our best to be respectfully curious when we might not understand, or we might have preconceived notions, that come in the forms of stereotypes or biases, but we really want to, kind of make a commitment to be a little more responsible when we come to setting ourselves up to being an agent of change, as I mentioned, being willing to ask ourselves, are there any thoughts or beliefs that I'm holding that I do not have confirmation to? So really being open to learning as much as we can, especially from those that are different from us. We never know what people's stories have been. We don't know if they are willing to share with us what their stories have been, but we definitely know that everyone has a story. And sometimes they're willing and open to share it with us. And sometimes it's something that is going to take a lifelong process to really get to under the surface and heal from within. So we want to be mindful of everyone's different journeys to, our front step to the front of our awareness, and always with the strength-based approach, always asking, looking for what is strong in them. Many times we meet individuals that, yeah, they've gone through something difficult, but they're still standing. They're still trying. There's still a fight in them for their better self, for their potential. I always encourage individuals to, look beyond what we can see and look for the potential of what can be, because it never, you never know what the way you look at someone, what they might be internalizing from that. And when you look at someone with, with the eyes of what their potential could be, you might just be that individual with the sparkle in their eye that really makes them believe in themselves. So what is strong in you? Why? Why do we need to be trauma and resilience informed? Well, because youth in foster care have gone through difficult challenges, more than the average general population. And that we know because they have, been in challenges that are now documented to the point where, we are really looking for the community to help us through the process of healing, through the process of just, moving along. And anywhere they go, they bring their invisible backpack with them. everything that they've ever lived, everything they believe in. Able to allow that space and that grace for individuals to find their healing path. Um, trauma is one of those things that how is this how did this experience affect me? What is it about this experience that I can now, take ownership of or change the narrative? And we're going to be talking about more of those strategies and practices further on. So I want you to keep those curious questions in mind. We also want to be aware and be ready for some of the responses that we might see. It is very difficult, and it doesn't matter where you're from, your level of education, your economic status. Human beings, it's a very difficult thing to be vulnerable. So when we know that everyone that we've ever met or will ever meet, especially the youth that we work with in foster care, have gone through extremely challenging and painful situations, is important that we are able to identify some of the common responses that we might see as behavior towards ourselves or others that tend to be responses to their trauma. Many times we might identify some of these behaviors as clues, and other times we, depending on where we are, we might take it, in a personal way, which then affects the way we see them and way that we address them and treat them. So it's important that we are aware of some of the interference that trauma has on people's ability to trust in others, how it affects the sense of safety, how it makes it difficult to manage emotions, and a difficulty in really trying to look beyond the right now into future or consequences. We also want to be aware of physical and emotional responses to stress. Individuals that have just ongoing challenges might find it more difficult to manage stress, because when we are highly activated, our stress response does a number of things to our mind, body, soul, you name it. It completely disrupts our human existence because it's an overload of just an activation that is too much sometimes for the body, the heart, and the mind to keep going. So, and this is not an extensive list. So of course, there's many, many more responses to trauma that we are able to see and feel from some of the youth that we work with. But I would like to ask, any of you who would like to share, what are some of the other trauma responses that you have encountered through your experience of working with youth in foster care? Sleep disturbances, nightmares, flashback, withdrawn. Definitely, sounds like someone who, you know, is missing a sense of safety. Oh, yes, that is a very common one, Trin. Youth disengage with supporters when they experience stress. And, it's always one of those a tug and pull, it feels like. But it's, it's also a defense mechanism, because they don't want to be hurt again. So I think that, that's a very common response that we see when we're, trying to give love and support. Sometimes they come towards us or pull away because they want to see if it's real. I don't know if you've ever heard, the statement. I know I, working with the same youth, would always say, do you really care about me, or is it just a job for you? And it would take time and many, many, many rejections, to, truly show, how much, we do care. Hypervigilance, definitely always having to be on your toes, always feeling that you need to protect yourself. Yes, Sandra, trying to control all the details, because one of the things about trauma is that it happens in the absence of control. That is one of the fundamental characteristics of trauma, that there was no control on our part for whatever we witnessed, whatever we experienced, or whatever we, felt. So it's very important for us after a traumatic experience to have a sense of control over what's happening or going to happen. The activation of the fight flight response, very, very on edge all the time. We might see outbursts of aggression with no sense of where it came from. So definitely unable to regulate those big feelings. Unhealthy eating, we might see self-harming behavior, suicidal ideation. Hopelessness is definitely one of those dark places where, a lot of pain and a lot of struggle can put any one of us there. And when we are, definitely identifying, that dark cloud over someone, we have to name it. Many of you might be aware of Dr. Dan Siegel's name it to tame it philosophy, and it's backed up by a lot of data. But he really provided a short, catchy phrase to, to describe the ability of our, in essence, our awareness of what's going on, and our awareness to, to really have more of that ability to self-regulate through naming the sensations and feelings and thoughts that really run through our mind and our body. So definitely normalizing that, this is very, of course, with, some of the challenges that we've encountered, it makes sense that people would feel, stuck under that dark cloud. But it's important that we, find the words that are plain words to really describe how, it's okay to feel. And sometimes those feelings can be intense. And for a provider, for a caregiver, those feelings can be scary. But it's better for us to leave an open door to those, to the unpacking, right? To the unpacking of all of those, than to have them overwhelm, the youth or the individuals that we're working with. Lashing out, depression, wear cold or, oh yeah, wear a cold or hard exterior mask. Acting, yeah, uninterested. Yes, there's always a fear. There's always going to be a fear of being rejected. There's always going to be a fear of being, not being loved back. So we definitely want to acknowledge and validate that. Those are very real feelings that are very common. And stuck. Who here hasn't felt stuck? I like to call it, because again, I find so much practical use in using plain language. So, that stuck feeling I refer to it as the funk. Sometimes we're in a funk and it's really hard to shake it off. But once you find that outlet, whatever that outlet might be for you, you see how it's there's just like this cloud that just lifts, and you're able to enjoy yourself a little bit more. You're able to breathe a little deeper, and see, the upcoming future with more hope and optimism. So thank you all for sharing some of the responses to trauma that many of you have experienced. As you go through the chat, you'll see that those experiences are very common. And, it seems that many of you have had similar experiences. And it's important that we also understand that individuals in foster care tend to sometimes be with us for a very short period of time. And many of the youth that are in the system, many of them at the end of the year age out. And what happens when we're thinking about inspiration, when we're thinking about transforming trauma, we really want to think about the adults that we're setting up into the future. We really want to think about the self-efficacy, the self-esteem, the belief in self, because we know that the stats are against us. We really know that it's difficult for a youth that has aged out of foster care to really find that road to achieve their true potential. And here are just some statistics that show, on average, the number of youth that age out of the system annually. And as you can see, 4,000 in California, and we have a number for the Inland Empire. But for LA County in the year 2020 to 2021, the stats of the number of youth that age out was 2,300. 2,300 youth approximately aged out of the system. And as you can see here, many of them, do not attempt or graduate from college. We can see the cycle of one system to another through the percentage of how many become incarcerated. And we also see that the ability for them to self-sustain is difficult based on the amount of money they're able to earn in comparison to what we really need to survive and to thrive. And one of the ways in which we see that these practices really come through for us is that when we know what the expectation, or when we know what can be helpful to really set, the youth up for success, and not be afraid to talk about the big T, right? About the trauma, about the challenges, about the mood swings, everything that comes out of a youth or a child, whether it be, quote unquote, a, difficult behavior or aggressive behavior, take it as an invitation to be respectfully curious. I wonder, that is the phrase that I think saves us all, and especially in hot moments when we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do. I wonder, or it seems, right, we want to provide a sense of validation through what our senses are telling us. So when we're able to do this and we're able to get comfortable, we're able to communicate effectively about the challenges without, being scared. We're able to also improve the outcome of the behavior of the situation, and the goal is to improve the outcome of the trajectory of the youth's life. We also provide the space for us to respond appropriately by, again, having that mindful interaction between what we see and what it could really be telling us, and having that ability to provide the space for us to hear and read between the lines. What is the message that I'm being sent, and how can I best use the information I know to do better, to provide the space for the unpacking. And overall, being aware of the impact and being aware of what our goal is by, implementing these trauma and resilience informed practices reduces the risk of, of us having our own challenges, because I think that many of you by this time are aware of the compassion fatigue, the secondary traumatic stress, the vicarious trauma, the burnout. These are not just words, these are experiences. And when you are a giver, when you are a person that loves to help, it's very easy to fall into the buckets of being affected, because it is through our care and our commitment to seeing other people thrive that sometimes we hurt. Sometimes we fall into the same, there's a saying about a river, and how people were kept on being found along the river. And it was like, how many times can you pull a person out of the river until you go up to the very tippity top to find out where these bodies are coming from? So it's kind of the same concept, that we have to be aware of what is the root cause, and how do we not only protect ourselves from it, because if we're helpers, we have to be able to help ourselves before we can help anyone else. So really being mindful of how much care we are instilling in ourselves, so that we can always be ready and willing to provide that extra sense of support. Because what we're here to talk about today is, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of energy, because it doesn't happen from one day to another. It takes patience and understanding and managing our expectations. I like to say, change your expectations to appreciations, because then we will be, we won't be as disappointed. We will probably have more wins than disappointments when we have no expectation, and yet every little thing that we receive is out of true appreciation. So in transforming trauma, we are talking about the innate ability of all of us human beings to be resilient. But not just human beings, because all animals, all living things are resilient. So how can we use this innate ability and really foster it into enhancing the potential of every single individual, every youth, every child that we encounter? And what we know about, those that are resilient is that they see themselves as, being safe. They see themselves as being capable, and they feel loved. And those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about in terms of, what can I do? What is the role? How can I best, suit my role? And we really want to acknowledge that it's it's a very, it's a long journey. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that there is a special formula, or there is a cookie cutter, type of, process that if you take it, everything will come out right. But one of the things that are helpful is this understanding of, really shifting our deficit thinking to adaptive strengths. We might see youth who at first, when they first came to us, were very quiet, were very shy. little by little, we see them coming out of, their shell. We see them being more expressive. We see, but remember that their shyness and their quietness is not a deficit. It's an adapted strength, an adaptive protection that they have had to acquire based on what they've been through. Maybe they were, mistreated or abused for sharing, their thoughts or opinion or speaking. We have no idea, what they've been through unless they've shared. And when they do share, we have a little bit more to work with, right? Because now we know the boundaries, we know the discomfort, we know what is comfort. We also want to, through this adaptive strength perspective, we also want to focus on the wins. Many times we might not feel that we have many wins, but every day we have an opportunity to be better than the last. So the wins might be small. They might be so small that you don't even think they're wins. But if you got up today and you made your bed, that's a win. If you got up today, didn't make it, that's a win too. You got up today. Today in this, time and space that we currently live in, there is so much heartbreak and so much suffering that it would be quite reasonable for people to stay in bed and, and feel completely overwhelmed and hopeless. But when we have the ability to get up in the morning and not just get up, but be part of other people's lives, and not just other people, but youth and children who are in, the foster care system, might as well get up and put your cape on, because this type of work is very hard and it's difficult. It takes a lot of love and a lot of compassion and a lot of patience. So when we are able to really truly see our space in this system and our goals and our role, we can really then start to identify, the little wins, the big wins, and overall, just having another opportunity is yet another win. We also want to, identify that, sometimes the youth that we see, the children that we see, have not just gone through difficult challenges in their little tiny life, in their, short amount of lifespan. But, if they are children of color, they've also had other, types of injustices. They might have been treated differently. They might have already experienced discrimination, oppression. And we really want to validate, all the truth of, the society that we live in and how it marginalizes individuals, and really be able to, uplift individuals in, every possible way that we can. And we also want to honor and build on the connections in the sense of belonging, because again, one of the main things that help us flourish, not just thrive, not just stabilize, but really flourish, is this sense of worth, is a sense of belonging, the sense that I matter. And when we talk about, the things that are essential to building this sense of, yes, I can, this sense of, this week in the honor of Cesar Chavez, Si Se Puede, which translates to yes, we can, we really want to foster a strong relationship. Research shows that it takes at least one, one strong, stable, nurturing, trusting relationship with another individual, one anchor to really keep us going. And that is truth, no matter what age you are. We also want to feel connected. And in terms of how do we foster that in youth and children, connecting to a positive role model, a mentor, a safe place, a safe space, a brave space, for them to really explore who they are, their place in life, in society, and not feel judged, but truly feel accepted. We want to nurture talents and abilities and appreciate the uniqueness of each and every individual that comes through our lives, because every single person has something unique to them. We all have value, but we all have different talents and abilities that sometimes go underlooked because we might not know where to look. But that's why the self-exploration part of conversation is so powerful. And in the chat earlier, someone mentioned the need for control, and having that need to have some say-so, some autonomy, some empowerment into, controlling their own life, again, can really foster resilience. But, again, we have to consider their sense of safety, their sense of responsibility, and we really want to nourish their thought that yes, they can. They can do it on their own. They have what it takes to, overcome every and any challenge. And it's always helpful to pinpoint some of the challenges that, they might have had in the past, and show how they overcame that. And through that past experience, really weed out the strengths that you see. It might be hard for the children and the youth to identify what's strong in them, what's good in them. But when you and outside looking in, you have much greater perspective and a bigger picture of what can be going on. So definitely naming strengths and naming, those good positive attributes whenever possible. And you will always see over and over the sense of belonging. Many times we just want to belong. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, because that inspires hope, that inspires purpose. Providing youth and children to be part of community-based organizations, be in groups where they can identify with other individuals that might have similar experiences and have overcome them, can also be a great sense of building resilience. Now we're going to go into the part where we're going to talk about how do we then build on the strategies and the practices that enhance resilience, because we know what they are, we know what it looks like. So how do we put them into practice? But before I do that, I would like to hear from you. And if you would like to share some of your wisdom of what kind of strategies have been effective for you in building, resilience and building that inspiration and that determination to, be our best selves, or for the youth and children you work with to be your best self. Motivational interviewing. Yes, Sarah, that is such a good tool. And motivational interviewing, for many of you, you might know what that is. Is, when we provide open-ended questions, and we really try to be as open in the way in which we phrase our curiosity, to allow the speaker to enhance their thoughts and their perspective. Trent, thank you. Strength-based practice, acknowledging their current challenges, but also reminding them of their strengths and how they've overcome them in the past. Consistency. Yes, Kim, consistency, consistency, stability. Thank you, Ashley. Right, being open to what their interests are, their passions, events they like to attend. Patience, encouraging, supporting interests, active listening, listening with no judgment. Yes, thank you, Yolanda. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, everyone, especially those that might have had an absence of consistency, love, and compassion and encouragement, we all thrive when, being surrounded by all those great attributes, providing choices. And the thing about providing choices, because I've also done other talks where I've had individuals say, well, providing choices might be difficult because it might result into an argument. And the thing about providing choices is that, in a sense, we're providing choices, but as, the individual providing the choices, you get to choose what the choices are, right? So it's like, you could either have A, you could have B. You're providing the choices, so therefore the choices are determined. But anytime you can provide choice, empowerment, it really does bring out the leader in anyone, especially, our kiddos. Respect. Yes. And working with, youth for most of my career, I can tell you two things that really are at the core of the driver in youth, and that is respect and status. Status meaning that they want to have worth, they want to be someone, and the respect comes with that acknowledgement that they are someone and they're someone that deserves respect. Yes, and we can't take things personally. It really, thank you, Steve. We have to, remember the common responses to trauma. And if you need a reminder, remind yourself, through your, in your mind, or, through constant repetition, this is a common response. Be prepared so that it doesn't hurt, because even though we're grown-ups and even though this might not be your first experience, you can't help but be hurt, because we have feelings, and so the more we're able to be prepared, we can, be better able to protect ourselves and our vulnerability as well. So thank you, everyone, for sharing those strategies. And one of the things that I like to always share is my appreciation, and my appreciation for all of you that, do this work and, are always seeking to better understand and grow your knowledge and your skills on how to, help someone along in their journey, especially in foster care. So for that, I would like to just honor you right now. And I am going to start a 2-minute time of reflection. And through this 2-minute, I would like for, all of you to self-appreciate, that the work that you're doing is amazing. And the fact that you are showing up, it's already a win. So if you can provide yourself with some self-love, self-compassion. So for the next 2 minutes, do what you got to do. Sit, listen. One of the things I like to do often, which doesn't happen, in regular spaces, is I like to put my hand over my heart and just be thankful, and self-appreciation, be thankful for all the things that our heart does for us. Thank you, everyone, for entertaining my 2 minutes of self-reflection. And, hopefully you shared some self-love with yourself. We are now going to move into the implementation of safety, inspiration, and change. So, with the previous prompt about what are the strategies that, have been helpful for you, we identified many things that you might not be aware that you do, or you might. I think that in professions where we lead with our heart, we wear many, many different hats. And through your way of implementing your skills and what comes naturally, your gifts, what comes naturally to you, you might have found a role in where you feel comfortable. And sometimes we might put hats on, or we might, take roles that don't feel too comfortable, but we feel like this sense of, I need to, um, you know, uh, I have to do it. But one of the things that I want you to remember is that, in the many roles, in the many hats that you wear, you can't always wear all of them at once. We really have to think about the support and the community engagement and all the other resources that we have at our disposal when we are thinking about, the life trajectory of the youth and the children that we work with. Because many of you know the reality that once a youth ages out of the system, it can be a very difficult reality for them to embark on. It can be very overwhelming, and it's important that we learn how to network and use the resources when they're still in our homes, so that we can model for them that, first of all, it's okay to ask for help. You know, in our society, asking for help has become so stigmatized that we need to break it. If we can start at home breaking the stigma, it's okay to ask for help, just like it's okay to not be okay all the time. Being human, being vulnerable, needing support is part of life. We need to normalize it because it is normal. So we really want to amplify the potential, not just of the thriving within our home, but once they leave our home and become, adults in their own right. So to kind of, give you a little story of how it takes a village. I want to show you this short clip.
Oregon's struggles with foster care are nothing new. The state is managing a system responsible for more than 8,000 children.
Yeah, very challenging. Arliss Haas shows how the power of a dedicated foster parent and a Portland foster care charity turned life around for a man from McMinnville.
It goes all the way back to being taken away from my family at the age of 7.
Anthony Preston and his siblings were removed from their home by the Department of Human Services. At that young age, he didn't understand why.
I was confused, angry. It was like, why am I not with my family? Why am I not with my parents?
That actually is the story.
He later learned drugs and alcoholism were the reason he was placed in the foster care system. That's where he spent the next 14 years until he aged out at 21. He spent those first several years going from house to house to house.
I honestly can't even count how many different homes I was in.
Taken away from all he knew, as a child, he felt like he was living among strangers.
Most of them try to do their best to make you feel comfortable, but that's really hard when when you have no idea how long you're going to stay there.
The instability, chronic stress, and trauma took its toll on him.
In the beginning, I got in a lot of trouble. I acted out a lot in class. Because I was angry and I was confused and didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was different than all the other kids.
Most of the time, that bad behavior had its consequences. But from 7th grade to senior year, Anthony got to stay in the same foster home. That's where he met his closest foster brother, Shiloh Hampton.
Having Shiloh with me it gave me a sense of family. It gave me a sense of being able to be a big brother, which I felt was stripped from me when I was taken out of my home and placed in the foster care system.
Starved for acceptance, Anthony and Shiloh fell into the wrong crowd.
He ended up going to Lloyd Center and hanging out at Holiday Park right across the street, which, if most people know, it's not necessarily the safest place. But he's hanging out with a group of friends that weren't always the best influence on him, and he ended up getting caught up in a gang-involved shooting.
Shiloh was the only one hit.
After that, I realized, I got to turn it around because he can't turn it around for himself, so I got to be able to do it for him.
In high school, Anthony decided to find a healthier way to cope with trauma. He started sports.
I got involved with, different communities that actually gave me that sense of family that I didn't actually get necessarily at home.
The woman who kept him in line all those years was one strict mama, Anthony's beloved late foster mom, Mrs. Washington. Her structure and unconditional love helped propel him in the right direction.
She showed me a really consistent love, raised me to be the man that I am today, and I would not be anywhere close to where I'm at without her.
His newfound drive and perseverance brought him into an elite group. Anthony became the 35% of foster youth to graduate from high school.
Let them know that there's a way out of that life that doesn't involve anything illegal.
And went on to become the 2% of foster youth to graduate from college. He received his degree in criminal justice from Western Oregon University. He's now putting that degree to use.
Spoiler alert, I'm a police officer for the city of McMinnville. Okay.
Speaking on stage at a foster care fundraiser, Anthony picks up his story with how a Portland foster care organization helped change his life too.
The reason I'm telling you my story isn't to make you feel bad for me. It isn't so that you guys will feel sad and guilty and then you'll want to give a lot to Project Lemonade. I wanted to tell you my story so you can see where I started from to where I'm at today and how the amazing organization that is Project Lemonade has got me to this point.
Project Lemonade operates 3 programs.
Project Lemonade provides foster youth with a free shopping event so they too can begin their school year with new clothing, shoes, and confidence.
I wanted to show you a clip from that video because it reiterates everything that all of you have shared in terms of what you're already doing in your homes, that consistency, that love, having those boundaries and talking about challenges. The video is a little longer and it goes into the organization. But another thing I want to point out is that, they said that tough mama, knew that she had her hands full, that she had a challenge, not just because of, the community and the, community violence and all the things outside, but there was other, unmet needs that, one person can't do it all. So reaching out and, allowing for Anthony to seek belonging in other spaces really, enhance, what we're talking about today, which is the transforming of trauma. And I also want to point out that Anthony shared something very, very important in terms of how his life changed. And one of the things that I want to leave you with is that, change comes through inspiration, which is what we hope, what we're going to be talking about today. But change comes through inspiration or desperation. And in Anthony's experience, it was a little bit of both. The desperation that, he will continue on living when his foster brother, will not. And that inspiration to live, for his foster brother, and all of these components have a, impact, a tremendous impact into, the trajectory of where, not where they come from, but where they're going, and even, the potential of their dreams and their hopes, which can be very hard to assess and think about when we are feeling unsafe, when we're feeling stuck, that we are in this never-ending challenge, this bubble of suffering. So that's why safety is one of those, components that is important, because it's built through that consistent, stable, nurturing space, the relationship with others, having the ability to not just feel physically safe. I have a shelter, I have a bed to sleep in, but also that emotional safety, that psychological safety, and that cultural safety, where we are truly accepting of their identity, of their cultural background, of the things they know and the things they don't know about themselves. Safety is instinctual. We all need it to thrive, and having communication about what they need to feel safe. Safety for us might look a certain way, it might feel a certain way based on our experience, but again, having that openness to ask, what does safety mean for you? Or like, for you to feel safe, what would that look like? Again, having those learning from them as the authors of their narrative. And inspiration comes from that sense of hope, feeling that you are worth something. And how do we do this? Well, we first can put it into practice in our homes. And the best way to have, children and youth, do what we say, because usually it's, They do what we do, not what we say. Is model exactly the sense of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-esteem that we want to see. We want to practice self-worth affirmations, and having those little reminders around your house, that you are loved, you're cared for. Those can be very nice reminders to just remind ourselves when we need a little pick me up. I'm loved, I'm cared for. And exposing individuals to similar stories of perseverance. There are so many examples of people going through difficult challenges and coming out the other side with such a powerful story, such a example of resilience and perseverance, and just self strength that can really be inspiring for individuals that might not be able to see that in themselves yet. And always acknowledge their strength, always acknowledge what's good, what's strong in them. And that's how we plant the seeds for the change that we want to see. And it comes when we fully accept and validate what they come with, who they are, who they represent themselves to be in that moment in time. There is a philosopher that says you never step into the same river twice, because just like the river has been ever flowing and it's not the same water that you once dipped your toes in, you are not the same person. We are always changing, we're always growing, and we're always finding ourselves over and over again. So when we have that appreciation for who they are and empower them to write their own narrative, it is their story, and they could tell it in whatever way, shape, or form best helps them heal. And we really want to not do things for them, but do things with them. Collaboration is one of those major things that we can do, because there's no such thing as fixing. There is no one in life that will ever require fixing, because we're not machines. We're much, much more complex than that. But when we work together to gain a sense of awareness and understanding of where we are, where we want to be, then we can explore, because we feel safe again, that emotional, psychological, cultural, and just safe. And and like I mentioned earlier, time always goes by so quickly. So I will make sure that you have access to the slides so that you can see. But this video here, I really wanted to add, because when we think of healing, many of us might think of therapy, of counseling, of these therapeutic techniques. But healing means different things for different people. In this video, we have a young girl from Los Angeles that was in the foster care system, and she talks about how she found healing through art. And sometimes her art was morbid. It showed a lot of suffering and pain. And as a caregiver, that can raise a lot of flags for us. But the thing is that having that patience, having that space, allowing for that, that grace for people to explore how they would like to share their reality can really be impactful if we have multiple ways of unpacking what might be hard to speak about. It could be easier if we paint it or write music about it, or dance it off or cook it, many different ways to heal. And how can we contribute to that healing? Again, first and foremost, take a moment for yourself. Take a moment to find, if you need to refill your cup, recharge your batteries, take a moment to support yourself and identify resources, individuals, systems that could be out there to help you in the goals. Collaborate with mentoring programs, with support systems. Know that you're not alone, and neither are the children and the youth that are in your care. They are not alone either, and there are so many other individuals that would share their experience and can help them understand that every challenge has an end, and that after the challenge there's possibility for healing and for thriving. And just to reiterate the many different ways in which listening to understand, as I mentioned earlier, not to fix. We're not going to fix anyone. We're not in the business of fixing people. We're in the business of growing with people. So we want to build rapport. We want to build that trust. We want to listen to their passions, to what brings them joy, what brightens up their face when you talk about it, what gives them hope. And, always read between the lines, body language. They might be ready to speak, they might not, but, allowing them to know, hey, it's okay. Whenever and if ever you feel like talking to me about what's on your mind, I'll be here, because just that sense of I'll be here, I care for you, can make a world of difference. And always reinforce individuality. For many of us, being different can be a burden. It can be something we try to hide. But when we know that we are special because we are different, it kind of helps us reflect on the things that makes us different as strengths, provide opportunities for identity and culture exploration, community involvement. And don't be afraid to be human, because you, as a human being that has lived maybe just a little bit longer than they have, you might have some skills and some coping mechanisms that have helped you along your path. There's no coincidence of the type of people that come into this line of work. Many of us have had our own challenges. Many of us have been called to this role because of a deeper purpose and meaningful connection to loving and working and growing with individuals who have experienced pain. So we really want to share what we've learned in this journey of life. And we don't have much time, but I just wanted to kind of show you this list and ask, does anyone know who Steve Jobs is, or Malcolm X? And this list of actors, musicians, athletes, they all have one thing in common. And I promise that I am almost done. But in the chat, do you have any idea what all of these, extremely successful individuals have in common? Yes, thank you. Yes, all of these successful individuals have all previously been in kinship care, foster system, and or were adopted. So again, there's a lot of stories of inspiration out there. The more and more that we normalize this, success after foster care, that's what we need to normalize. And remember that you're building the leaders of tomorrow. So give them and yourself as much grace and as much love as needed, because it's it's a very interesting journey. So with that, I end my my part, and I just want to open it up for any questions, any share outs, any comments. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. And now I am going to pass it on. Thank you, everyone. Always love being here with all of you. So I'm going to pass it on for what's next.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gomez. And thank you everyone for joining us today. The link to complete the certificates in the chat, and please follow us on social media at UCLA Pritzker, or visit our website at the link posted in the chat. And you're also welcome to contact us with any questions at our email, student.uclapritzker@gmail.com. We also have 3 more sessions in the Community Speaker Series, and you can sign up at the link that's also in the chat, or, and yeah, thank you. And you can also use the QR code on the screen to get your certificate form. And that concludes our event. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks, Dr. Gomez. We appreciate you. Thank you to everybody for joining us. We'll leave the link to the certificate in the chat. Please complete it so that you can get your certificate emailed to you. And we will see you for our next training in about a month. Thank you again. We appreciate all of you. Thanks so much.